Welcome to week 10 of Bible Studies for Life, continuing in the Gospel of Luke, looking at stories of faith. And man, what a great story we have today. Last week we were chapter 7. We had a centurion with his servant. This week we're in chapter 8, and we've got Jairus, a synagogue leader, with his daughter. So before we look at this passage, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Appreciate it if you do that. Helps our algorithm and all that, spreading the videos to many others. Like, comment, share. If you've got questions, put them in there. And if you want to support our ministry, go to give.exposedtochrist.com and you can support our ministry there. Let's look here. Just then, a man named Jairus came. He was a leader of the synagogue. He fell down at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him to come to his house because he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. And while he was going, the crowds were nearly crushing him. Okay. So we've got the story of Jairus, right? He has a 12-year-old daughter, his only daughter. We don't know if this was his only child, but it is his only daughter, and she was dying. Now, let's just say, he knows that she's dying because he has spared no expense with doctors to try to help her, and nobody can help her. Nobody's doing anything that has any medicine, has any treatment that's done her any good. He knows she is dying. And now this synagogue leader of the synagogue, is begging for Jesus' help, coming for Jesus. Now the crowds were crushing him. This is kind of so there's a piece right in the middle of this story that we're going to skip about the woman with the issue of blood. So you can go and read that to see that. We're going just in Jairus and his story, okay? So that's why we're skipping from verse 42 to verse 49. While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue leader's house and said, "Your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore." When Jesus heard it, he answered him, "Don't be afraid. Only believe, and she will be saved." So this is he's speaking to the woman. Again, read those verses to see that, right? And he gets this message. She's dead. Don't bother. Don't bother him anymore. Well, that was hard, right? That was hard. For Jairus to hear that, that's tough. Jesus heard it. He had an answer. Believe, and she will be saved. You just believe. You trust me. Put your faith in me. She's going to be okay. That's tough, right? But what else are they going to do? They've already tried everything else and it hasn't worked, and now she's dead. I mean, what else are they going to do? I imagine their pace really picks up now as they head to the home. And after he came to the house, he let no one enter with him except Peter, John, James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was crying and mourning for her, but he said, "Stop crying, because she's not dead, but asleep." And they laughed at him because they knew she was dead. Okay, so they get there and they go into the house, but he only lets Peter, James, and John go in with the mother and father. Again, this kind of special group of disciples, the leadership, you might call them, or the ones that he's really pouring more into. They're getting to see some things that the others just didn't get to see, right? But you've got everyone out here crying and mourning. Many of those people that are crying and mourning are there because this is the synagogue leader's home, and so they've come in support of the synagogue leader. And some of them are even being paid to be there to have a big show of grief for the child. And we know that some of them are not there maybe in an honest way, or they're there, as a way of, that's kind of what they do. They're professional mourners, because when Jesus says she's only asleep, they laugh. So they went from this mourning to laughter like that. Well, that tells you their mourning was fake, right? It wasn't real. But they said they knew she was dead. Jesus says she's not dead. All right, so when these two things come into conflict with one another, who do you believe? When what you know about the world comes in conflict with what God says about the world, who do you believe? When what you know because of your experience comes into conflict with what God says, which one do you follow? So he took her by the hand. He goes in, he takes her by the hand, and he calls out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Then he gave orders that she be given something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. He just calls her. Time to wake up. And her spirit returned, which tells you she was dead. Right? Her spirit returned. Your spirit doesn't return when you wake up from a nap. You may sometimes say, man, I was dead away. I was snoozing hard, right? But it's not real, right? But she was dead. Her spirit returned, but she got up at once. And he said, you need to feed her. Give her something to eat, right? And the parents were astounded. I bet they were. This trust that the Lord tells them, we'll go back here. What does he say? Believe, and she will be saved. They trusted Jesus. Now, they didn't understand it, but they trusted. Even when they were told she's dead, they trusted. They still took Jesus with them. They didn't turn to him and say, sorry to bother you. They still took Jesus with them. He said, believe, and she will be saved. And so they trusted Jesus and what he had to say. Even when everybody else around them said, no, she's dead, it's done, don't bother him, they can't do anything else. They trusted what Jesus had said. Even when what they knew, because they had never seen anybody else raised from the dead, they knew death is final. But Jesus said, you believe and she'll be saved. You trust me. And they stood on that instead of what everybody else said and what they would naturally believe. This is the challenge of faith, right? When what we think comes directly opposed to what we are certain that the Lord has said, trust the Lord. Trust the Lord. Every time, trust the Lord. All right, I hope that's helped. What a great story. Thanks for watching. Appreciate that. Thanks for teaching. Those of you that are teachers, God bless you for that. Starting off your new year. Hope we're through the first month. Hope you've had a great new year so far. Looking forward to finishing out the rest of this quarter really well. So thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment, like, share. I put your questions in. We'll see you next time.